I'm feeling sad already, but this is not the final moment that we will be together. We have some news, but stay connected to us until the end and we will reveal it. And I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that's to reach out to giving me the birthday wishes and showing concern due to my absence. So I know that you are in very good hands with the Ubuntu team last seminar and with the awesome host Ana Rita. And I want to give a special shout out to the Turkey and Egyptian delegates because during my absence, I was in fact in your countries and I felt very welcome. So thank you. And as we are fully aware, as I mentioned before, it's our last seminar, so woohoo. But certainly, will not be the last time we speak because we can keep in touch and do amazing things with Ubuntu methodology. And we have been embracing in this Ubuntu United Nations this new mission and Ubuntu worlds. So I'm very curious to know, up until now, what is the Ubuntu life lesson you cherish the most from this journey? Please share it in the chat with us and we will read it out during the session. But Moses, what is all about for today?
So today we've got a very exciting program, and the theme for today is I Have a Dream, and we are going to be focusing on gender equality and environmental protection. And I'm sure when we started, everyone saw some of the dreams which our facilitators had, we had written down and were sharing. And this is what we are going to be reflecting on today. So we are going to have a lot of inspiration from different speakers, from the wise words of Her Excellency, Her Royal Highness Princess Rima Ali, who is the co-chair of the Ubuntu United Nations. We are also going to explore the concept of Ubuntu and its contribution to gender equality as well as environmental protection. So today we've got a lot of an exciting lineup of guests that are here, that are joining us today. Who do we have, Joanna?
So for today, we have Mrs. José Ramos Horta, our Nobel Peace Prize laureate and chair of the Ubuntu United Nations. Also, Mr. Danilo Turk, former president of Slovenia and current president of Club de Madrid. And Mrs. Michel Bachelet, former president of Chile and current United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. And of course, our Royal Highness Prince Rima Ali, co-chair of the Ubuntu United Nations. And Moses, what we have in store for now?
So, as a tradition, we are going to be having some voices from the delegates themselves, where they are going to be sharing on their experiences and as well as their hopes for the future. And we've got 4 delegates today who we are going to be talking to, and they'll be sharing in terms of their reflections on their journey so far. And also given that today is the last day of the Ubuntu United Nations. So I'll start with the delegate from Canada. And from Canada, Rebecca Kosomi. I hope I pronounced it well. Over to you, Rebecca. Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Hello. Good day.
Good.
Thank you,
Great. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Pardon me?
Please go ahead.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to address the group today. As Moses said, my name is Rebecca. I'm a social worker, I'm a podcaster, I'm a volunteer manager, and I live in Ottawa, Ontario, also known as the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Pardon me if my voice is a little bit froggy this morning. It's very early in Ottawa, but very grateful to be here with you all. And I want to thank the UN Ubuntu Leadership Academy for giving me the opportunity to learn from all of you amazing delegates. I also really want to thank Ubuntu UN for giving me the opportunity to learn from all the UN leaders and the Nobel laureates. That's been amazing. Being on a Zoom call with Ban Ki-moon was literally a dream. So very grateful for this opportunity. I also really want to thank everyone who has contributed to our conversations. It's really reminded me that community exists on a global context. And I think in the last year with COVID, everything has become very community focused, and especially in Canada, we've really been focused on our own country. So this has been a great reminder that community is global, citizenship is global, and Ubuntu, I am because you are. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity. As I said before, wishing you all well. I'm re-energized to go back into my community practice, and I'm wishing you all well with the COVID pandemic continuing as much longer than we would hope to. So thank you so much and have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And indeed, community exists on a global scale. And Ubuntu, I am because you are. From Canada, we are taking the flight to Malaysia. And in Malaysia, we are joined by Reshna Rim Gamasen. Reshna, over to you.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
So hello, everyone. I'm Reshna, a delegate from Malaysia. Thank you so much to the UUN team for giving me this opportunity to say a few words on our last session today. This UUN journey has been an eye-opening and enlightening experience. I was able to listen to stories, plights, and experiences of the other amazing delegates and share some of mine too. But one of the biggest gifts we have received from UUN is the ability to expand our knowledge and open our hearts about peace and reconciliation, intercultural and interfaith dialogues, overcoming obstacles, and human rights from the insightful guest speakers and delegates. I also found the reflective group exchanges meaningful and memorable as we were able to talk about our challenges, which depicted similarities and different perspectives. Shout out to Group 1 for being open and generous with their stories. Each session has given me hope for our future, seeing every one of us striving to make a change, not just for ourselves, but for the betterment of society is revealing of our humanity and how we have always practiced and will continue to practice the Ubuntu mentality of collectivism and inclusivity. I am because we are. I am and will always be grateful for this opportunity to have been able to connect with such like-minded folk. And I hope we take all that we have learned to fight for a better future, side by side, regardless of where we are around the world. Thank you. Merry Christmas to everyone celebrating and a Happy New Year to all.
Thank you so much, Reshna. And indeed, you spoke of the similarities, where branches of the same tree, one human family, and also celebrating diversity, recognizing and appreciating the differences that we had. Indeed, it's been an exciting journey. It's sad to see the close of it, but I know we will still be connected, and this is what Ubuntu is all about. And for our final delegate, unfortunately, one of our delegates couldn't join us today, but we have a delegate from Estonia, Kairi Kusema from Estonia. Over to you.
Hello, I'm Kairi Kuusema from Estonia, as you said. So I wanted to actually not to repeat anyone else because many leaders, people, they are talking about these important issues like equality, human rights, environment. I wanted to point out actually one issue that is not actually talked that much. My little brother, for example, is deeply disabled. He has autism. He's mentally disabled. And if we are talking about equality and human rights, we should also stand for this. And we should, for the future, we should not exclude them from the society, for example, but we should start to learn and start to find out how to implement mentally disabled people to our society. Because what I have been thinking, and after some discussion with many other young activists, actually, if we find some ways to implement this, our fellow human beings in this world, we can also decrease the weight on the shoulder of many families, so they can actually focus on support them. Like they can, like if we are creating jobs in this social healthcare system and innovate this area, we can actually bring more well-being in the how to say, in individual's life also, because many people, like many families, are facing these issues. And yeah, this is something like discrimination, and really this is social exclusion, and not many people are talking about this. And many families are facing, especially now during the COVID. You're staying at home, and this social healthcare systems, people are now, after the COVID, more stressed, and how to deal this. This is a very big issue. And also about environment, this is the other topic I wanted to mention. I'm having organic farm. I've been 30 years in this field, and we started to make food innovation just to find out how to support not only mentally disabled people, but also how to work through food innovation to avoid illnesses, allergies, and this is also very important. Organic way of life to avoid these different kind of health issues for the future. So we really need to work for the clean future. And I have many ideas, but if anyone wants to be in contact, LinkedIn is there. You can always come and talk and share ideas, because we need real actions. We don't need to only talk here. We need actions.
Thank you so much, Kairi, and thank you so much, for challenging us, on the issue of equality, and also looking at people who are differently abled and those living with disabilities, cognitive or otherwise. And this is a very important issue. Ubuntu is about everyone participating in a relationship. And when you spoke to the issues around, exclusion, those are some of the things that we need to really fight and to ensure that everyone, is included in society, and we build the societies that we want. And you also spoke of, the environment, and most importantly, you talked about, we need real actions, and which is, I believe, what this session is going to be focusing on. What is the dream, and how can that dream be achieved in reality? So thank you so much for your kind words and for your inspiration. And thank you so much, everyone who shared today. It's so much an honor. And I'll give this opportunity over to Joanna. Joanna.
Thank you, Moses, and thank you, delegates, to bring up so important, so much important issues that we should address. And like you said, it's not all talk. We need more action. So feel free to connect to each other and to do action in own country and in a larger way, because some of the delegates, most of them, are very active in their community and are working in voluntary way or a full-time work in some non-profit organizations. So I believe that we have the quality to address some of the issues in our countries and worldwide. So I just want to take these moments to do some reminders, and one of which is, please bring your glass today with your own drink. Mine is water. Water is always good, and because we will going to do a toast, because this is an emotional seminar, but it's a seminar to celebrate this journey. So, and we will have time to see your own Ubuntu t-shirt along the way. So feel free until the end of the seminar to insert on the Padlet your photo and your dream. And now I want to move on for the next moment and welcome Her Royal Highness Princess Rimhali, that will address us regarding the subject of today's seminar.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Thank you, Moses. Welcome to all the delegates to this last session of the Ubuntu United Nations seminar. Here we are together again in this fifth and last session of the series on Ubuntu and the United Nations. I know I shall really miss our regular meetings. It so happens that it coincides with the end of the year as well, or the eve of a new year, 2022. So may I wish a very happy holiday season to each and every one of you and your families. I'm sure we are all around the world united in wishing that the pandemic will leave our planet for good over the course of the next year, and the earlier the better. Now, in the last few months, you've been on an exciting journey. We all have. It's been a journey of discovery of Ubuntu, of how we can apply its principles to the main issues that govern our world and that the world body, the United Nations, is working on, as well as the values that motivate us to be better people. These values that can motivate you as leaders who understand that the most effective leadership is the servant leadership model to change things where we see the need for change, be it on the level of economic equality, justice, human rights, or gender. And to build bridges to keep fostering and growing a community of people who care, who want to reach out, who listen, and who call people in rather than call people out, to make sure we work in dialogue and thrive together, not leaving people behind. Now, you all have several tools at your disposal, and the amazing guests who have accompanied us on this program, plus the workshops and exercise practiced here, they've all shown that there are a variety of fields in which you can apply practically everything that you've been learning. You will also have honed a skill that is increasingly important in a world where social media opens the doors to so many myriads of opinions, and unfortunately also fake news that has led many people to think there is a huge crisis of information or misinformation. And that skill is the skill of listening, the realization that communication is a two-way street, and that listening to the other is where compassion, understanding, and respect of the other begin. Now, some people are talking about the challenges that are being brought about by what is known as the woke culture and the cancel culture that sometimes comes with it. There is an area between generations. There needs to be more listening, because I believe that young people have a genuine desire to change things in the right way. You have that desire. There are new methods and new ideas maybe as to how to go about this change. We can practice Ubuntu just by listening to one another to begin with and exchanging to help us all move forward. I myself have learned a great deal from this program and its speakers, but also from you, from your questions, from your ideas, which I hope will make me a more aware and efficient president of the Anna Lindh Foundation as we advocate for intercultural dialogue around the Euromed region. To begin with, I'd like to thank our host, President Ramos Horta. You couldn't have found a better example of someone who is the change he wants to see. He's fought for his country's independence without ever compromising his values to promote peace, justice, and equality, not only in East Timor, but also in his region and beyond when he served as UN envoy in Guinea-Bissau. He has respected the democratic principles he promoted and continues to do so without denying his support or help to those who need it among his people. Professor John Volmink, my co-host and founder, chairman of this Ubuntu Academy. He's unfortunately ill, but we wish him a speedy recovery. John Volmink is also someone who's worked hard to change the reality of bullying and violence in South African schools, using the values of Ubuntu that he has shared and developed with you along the sessions with real life examples. In all the work that he has done, Professor Volmink has literally embodied the principles of Ubuntu, very much like Nelson Mandela himself, despite having lived through apartheid and lost people he loved. He's never wavered from the principle that we are all brethren, all linked to one another, and all equally worthy of being called and treated as human beings. You've heard from clerics who've worked hard on reconciliation and inclusion, from international legislators who've played important roles in reconciliation among people who once killed one another. You've heard from a freedom fighter turned president from Mongolia, who's advocated and pushed for human rights and democracy in his country and in his region in Asia. You've heard from someone who created a system to help reduce poverty through microcredits and earned a Nobel Peace Prize as a result. You've heard from presidents, UN Secretary Generals, past and present, from someone who saved and continues to save children from slavery at the risk of his own life. And the themes that have been examined have not been chosen haphazardly. They touch on subjects that are of primary concern to us as human beings if we want to live in dignity and equality. In all these fields, the values of practicing Ubuntu and remembering the work you do to promote peace within an organization or a community, to build bridges, to help those in need, to help bring about inclusion and fight exclusion, to help educate and communicate, knowing that we are all connected and we are all bound by one another, are by now, I hope, obvious to all. So in this, our last webinar, who better to take us through the last session than our two guests? President Danilo Turk, the third president of Slovenia and president of the Club of Madrid. He has worked relentlessly to promote human rights and the rule of law in all his roles, including within, of course, the United Nations. And through his foundation, He has devoted huge efforts to help the rehabilitation of children victims of wars and conflict. And his work on water and the environment makes him a really important voice in environmental matters today. Her Excellency Michel Bachelet, High Commissioner for Human Rights, joins us later and will share her thoughts with us about the challenges that humanity is facing too, maybe even the dangers and fears, but also the expectations and hopes we have for a better world, and to raise the all-important issue of gender in our world today and how Ubuntu promotes equity between genders. We're all grateful to them both for agreeing to speak with us today. I'd like to salute them both for their exceptional career, for their struggle in all the work that they've done to support children and all of us as human beings. Michel Bachelet's struggle in the resistance to Pinochet's dictatorship and her role as the first woman president of Chile, followed by her first UN role when she created UN Women and led UN Women, resonates particularly with me. You will see how she's been alternating between the top job in Chile and the top job in the United Nations. And I say it resonates with me particularly because I was just a little girl in London and then later living in Algiers when the people of Chile suffered the tragedy of the assassination of President Salvador Allende on, at first, 9/11. It was the 11th of September, 1973. In London, a great Chilean painter and a close friend of my parents, the late Roberto Matta, kept us informed of the struggle of the people of Chile. And in Algiers, when I was living there, it was Dr. Ariel Ulloa, one of the Chilean intellectuals who took refuge in Algeria. His daughter arrived in my class in 9th grade, and they kept us informed about and mobilized for Chile. In 1982, the filmmaker Costa Gavras opened our eyes further to the problems of missing people in Chile with his film Missing. And I stayed in regular contact with my Chilean friends, even when we all left Algiers, me to study abroad and they to go home. She would send me letters and pictures describing and showing how they just continued demonstrating in the streets of Santiago and Concepcion in Chile. The struggle for liberty, justice, and equality never ends. There are always many places in the world where the needs are particularly acute, where there is need to mobilize support and call for solidarity. That is what our two guests do day in and out. Look at Myanmar, look at Ethiopia, look at Afghanistan. To name just 3 places, for example, where President Bachelet is deeply engaged. Look at the former Yugoslavia and what it has transformed to after a brutal war. President Danilo Turk will know about the current threats and hopes for the Balkans today. We all know that wherever liberty is stifled, where inequality is the order of the day, or injustices are suffered by many, we can be certain that minorities are at the receiving end. And you can be certain that women are one of those suffering minorities. Now, much has already been said about that subject with real eloquence and deeper knowledge than I have. And progress has undoubtedly been made over the last few years. And that is true everywhere. But I'd like to draw your attention to 2 important developments. One is a ray of hope, and the second, terrible threat and regression we need to be aware of. The first is something called Girls Not Brides. It was an initiative of the elders, a group of retired personalities that were brought together by Nelson Mandela in 2007. Girls Not Brides is today a flourishing network of several hundreds of NGOs active all over the world to put an end to the widespread practice of pushing very young girls into forced marriage. The network is led by Mabel van Oranje, the energetic and dedicated Dutch princess who was the first CEO of the elders. And every year there are up to 10 million forced marriages of girls who are often in their early teens in the world. The NGO Girls Not Brides is battling ceaselessly to put an end to these outrageous practices. The other development I wanted to say something about is Afghanistan. Our guests will know a lot about it. In particular, I believe President Bachelet has been actively trying to do something about it. The Taliban drew the attention to the corruption that existed in the regime that they ultimately defeated. There is a case for condemning the corruption that existed. But one thing that neither the Taliban or anyone can deny is that in every field, so much progress has been achieved in the last 20 years that followed the awful 9th of September 2001 and the first vacation from power of the Taliban. One area where progress has been most remarkable was education of both men and women. And one area where the Taliban are taking their country backward is in precisely the field of education. The education of both men and women, but their action is directed much more against women. So we can go back on the mistakes of the past, but maybe One thing I will say in the case of Afghanistan and the Taliban, as in the case of several other issues you will find, one thing that did not happen was there was no listening. Ubuntu, I am because you are, implies that whether or not I agree with you, whether or not I like what you say, I still listen to you. I listen to know, to learn. Had someone taken time to listen to what the Taliban were saying, or just asked where they had disappeared when the powers that were in Afghanistan believed they had rerouted them for good, they would have known that the Taliban never went away, that they represented people who had and still were able to garner support for them. Ubuntu is also about listening to other fellow human beings, to what they are saying, whether or not we agree. It allows you to call people in the right way, to build bridges with them by understanding where they're coming from. It's also about listening to our planet, listening to scientists, listening not to all of the noise that is out there necessarily, but fine-tuning our ears with a critical mind to information, to the truth, and to other people's feelings. Of course, it's also about compassion and solidarity, about recognizing in all other human beings a brother or a sister. We witnessed some solidarity in observing who welcomed the Afghans running for their lives, or simply to make sure their children would be educated. In Erbil in Iraq, where students from the American University of Kabul were accepted on faith, even when they didn't have any matching paperwork to present because they'd fled so quickly. In Rwanda, the country that welcomed the School of Leadership Afghanistan, SOLA, that was Afghanistan's only boarding school for girls. With the US withdrawal from Afghanistan and ensuing collapse of the Afghan government, Shabana Basij-Rasir, who founded the school, suddenly found herself in a position where she had to sneak out nearly 250 students, staff, faculty, and family members, and flee as refugees. They were welcomed in Rwanda, where they are rebuilding that community. And I've been told, by the way, that they would welcome help. People on the move, women in need of support today, have that in common with the other issue that is being discussed today, the environment, that there is an urgency for us to act on them if we want to make sure there is change brought about in the right direction. Every time a person is turned away from the shores of safety to which they fled, there is a risk they will die. Every time a woman is denied an education, her offspring and the ensuing generations will struggle more economically for lack of education as well. And every time we ignore the calls for help of Mother Nature, we suffer the consequences. The pandemic and the increasing refugee crisis are main proof of what I'm saying. On the contrary, when we listen, we save lives, we grow our economies, and we prevent more threats to our livelihoods as humankind. And every single one of you is able to help at every single level, no matter what your profession, your position, your community. Servant leadership can be applied everywhere. Before we pursue and listen to our wonderful guests, I would like to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, the first chairperson of the UN Human Rights Commission. She believed in the role of the United Nations as one of our greatest hopes for peace. She believed it was not enough to talk about peace, but to work at it. She also believed in courage, in having the strength to stare down our fears and believe we could bring about change. She believed that change started with small steps at every level. And she said, where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he or she attends, the factory, farm, or office where he works. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning everywhere. Without concerned citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world. So I would urge you all in your respective geographies, in your professional backgrounds, to continue being engaged in the causes you defend, to make the world a better place, to promote peace, justice, and human rights for all, to remember that we all hail from the same ancestors, and that, as Terence said, I am human, and I think nothing human is alien to me. I would urge you to never normalize situations where a fellow human being is being hurt or subjected to humiliation or excluded or oppressed. To remember that Ubuntu and human rights mean we have a human duty to make sure my individual rights do not cause my neighbors to lose theirs. We have a duty to raise our voices when our fellow humans is crushed. We must never accept as normal the deaths of refugees in the Mediterranean, the deaths of refugee children stuck in a forest in a no man's land, forbidden to enter any country when their parents were seeking better lives for them. We must not normalize violence or bullying of any kind, whether in a playground or by one people over another, not to normalize any occupation, and we should not accept to see as normal the injustices that women face at work, at home, or within their communities at large. Or to see as normal, we should not accept to see as normal how our planet is being treated by all of us, and how we decide to share the resources of our planet matters. Make no mistake, how we share these resources, whether we share them with equality or not, goes way farther than the future generations that we haven't met yet. It affects our lives today. Kairi Kusema, that we heard earlier on, mentioned the case of her disabled brother and how fellow human beings in his situation need to be included. And I was also so impressed by her work to care for the food we ingest to prevent health issues, and her call to action for us to live healthier and more sustainable lives. All that happens through the process of us respecting the earth we live in, and it's extremely important to raise that awareness. The theme today is I have a dream, and you held up your dreams of equity, of justice, of love prevailing, of living together in peace to spread hope, empathy, love. One of you said to travel around the world with Ubuntu. So please make sure after you leave this seminar that you keep talking to one another constantly. Every little thing you can do will help, beginning with just raising awareness. If you can offer an internship, a job, help place someone on the rails for a better education, hold your hand out to someone who's come from far away, running away from conflict, and find it in you to listen to the other and call them in every time to honor and celebrate our diversity. You're already doing a lot. I would urge you to continue using the Ubuntu United Nations app to communicate and keep abreast of developments in your various neighborhoods, which are of concern to all of us. Our humanity has enough challenges to overcome as it is. How much easier to face them when we all work in unity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, you're very honest. It was a very insightful speech, and I saw a lot of message in the chat and splendid. Thank you so much, and for especially for reminders that we can practice real change every day, and to bring the Ubuntu methodology and Ubuntu philosophy to a next level in our communities. So thank you so much once again. And now I want to introduce Moses, because he will take us to the next guest.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thank you so much, Your Royal Highness. It's always inspiring to hear you, and sometimes you capture some of the things that happened in the start of the, and I don't know how you do that, but it's really remarkable, and we are really honored to have you here. So it's my honor and privilege to introduce His Excellency President Danilo Turk, who is the former president of Slovenia. And since 2013, President Turk has been a member of the World Alliance, World Leadership Alliance, Club de Madrid. In October 2019, His Excellency was elected by the General Assembly as the organization's president for the period between 2020 and 2022. Over to you, Your Excellency.
It is a great pleasure to be with you at this last of the 5 seminars that took place within the Ubuntu United Nations trainings. I had the honor to participate in the launching of this initiative back in May as Club de Madrid president, and it is a pleasure to be here today again to close the cycle. Now, allow me first of all to reiterate our gratitude to the people who worked on this project, Rui Marquez, Monica Rocha, and all the staff that has worked in the organization of all the activities that have constituted the Ubuntu United Nations trainings, and to achieve great results. I would like to congratulate all the young people, the delegates that participated, for your incredible effort and commitment. I hope that these trainings will give you a useful knowledge and skills and motivation for a renewed commitment to act in the countries as bridge builders, seeking the common good for your communities. Now, as president of Club de Madrid, an organization of 110 democratic former heads of state and government from more than 70 countries, I believe that democracy is best shaped by the citizens and leaders of each country. For almost 15 years by now, Club de Madrid has promoted the idea and the concept of shared societies, in which all individuals hold a status of being equal contributing participants, free to express their differences, while, very importantly, integrating their voices within a broader population and for the inclusive rights, while providing every individual with equal opportunity to engage in policy development. As partners of the Ubuntu United Nations initiative, Club de Madrid, we welcome the initiatives that may arise from the dialogues, and I would welcome you to meet with our secretariat in Madrid and to discuss further ideas for the future. Now, today, the themes of the discussion will be gender equality and environmental crisis, two very big and central issues of current times in which you play an important role, and the entire young generation plays an important role in this. We have established earlier this year a global commission for dealing with the questions of democracy in emergencies. Club de Madrid obviously is very interested in these problems that arise in our time, and we have produced a report which will be published shortly with a number of recommendations. Among the key recommendations, we include the importance of the participation of women and youth in decision-making and thinking of current decisions that influence the future generations. Now, 26 years ago, feminists, activists, and young people from all over the world came together and worked on achieving a gender equality through its historic Beijing Declaration, and came to the consensus on the centrality of gender equality to achievement of development goals and human rights, including promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies, justice for all, and effective, inclusive, and accountable institutions at all levels. Despite all the advances and all the efforts that civil society, youth, institutions, and overall feminists around the globe are doing, we must continue to work on these important objectives so that the COVID-19 pandemic does not reverse all the progress. We, at the Club de Madrid, put gender equality at the center of our work because our vision of democracy that delivers is achieved only through equal rights and opportunities for all. Now, let me say a few words also about the climate change and the problems which characterize our era. The Glasgow Climate Pact, which was agreed at the 26th UN Climate Change Conference in November, has contained some encouraging commitments, but it has been largely criticized for not going far enough. Youth indeed plays a crucial role in combating climate change, and we have seen how young people are demanding urgent climate action and have placed a sense of urgency and outrage in the political sphere, leading important protests in the streets and in the conferences. Youth has constructed a powerful platform for change and to propose ideas for concrete actions to address climate change that is being taken into account. Now, climate change is an important subject for Club de Madrid also. Our organization has put together a project which has the objective of building upon the experience of the leadership by the Club de Madrid members, former presidents and prime ministers. And the initiative will pay particular attention to potential of participatory mechanisms to feed into policy-making processes. It has to be intergenerational, and it has to be gender-based. There has to be gender equality in this context. Now, in launching of the Ubuntu United Nations initiative, I mentioned how necessary it was for youth to be part of all the important conversations of the United Nations. And today, we shall be engaged in two most important topics of our time. I encourage you to remain connected through the UNN app that the organizers created, which is now a huge network of future leaders for construction of a more just and equitable world. This is important because no initiative, no particular set of meetings like the ones that we are having this year can be final. Continuation is important, and your important work has to continue. Let me conclude by quoting one of the very inspiring young persons, a young woman, a leader and Nobel Prize laureate, Malala Yousufzai. And she said, "There is a moment where you have to choose whether to be silent or to stand up." I encourage you to stand up and continue working to build a more inclusive, respectful, equitable societies and a better world. I wish you all success in your work.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for you really challenged us, reflecting on some of the key points that were raised in the speech. He started by, His Excellency started by noting that, democracy is best shaped by leaders and citizens, and he echoed the idea of shared societies and why it is important to have voices being integrated in this fabric of democracy. He spoke to the issue of dignity and human rights and the importance of participation of us, especially as youth leaders, as well as women. His Excellency also spoke on the important theme of gender equality. And one of the things that he said was democracy that delivers that delivers is the democracy that entails equal rights for all, and also appreciating the role of young people as advocates in addressing issues around climate change. And I think one of the things that he also spoke in terms of as a call to action was, the importance of us as young leaders to be connected. And the Ubuntu United Nations app is one of the platforms that has been created specifically to connect the leaders that are gathered here. Thank you so much again, Your Excellency, for the remarks and also for the insights. Over to you, Joanna, for the next session.
Thank you so much, Moses. So now we have another special guest, is Michel Bachelet. And she's a Chilean politician who has served as United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights since 2018. And she also previously served as the President of Chile from 2006 to 2010. And from 2014 to 2018 for the Socialist Party of Chile. She's the first woman to hold the Chilean presidency and the first elected female leader in South America. She was appointed the first executive director of the newly created United Nations entity for gender equality and empowerment of women. So let's hear and welcome Michel Bachelet.
Greetings to all of you. I'm very glad to be connecting with so many young people, and I thank the Group de Madrid and Ubuntu Leaders Academy for bringing us together. Each one of you is a leader or a potential leader in our work to build societies that are inclusive and respectful of the equality and dignity of every person, and which thrive and develop peacefully amid a healthy environment. This is the vision of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the UN Common Agenda issued by the Secretary General in September, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and great body of international human rights treaties that member states have agreed. Because, as the pandemic has made very clear, we cannot continue on our current course. We need better laws, institutional and economic systems that will end the suffering, discrimination, and lack of opportunity which burden billions of people around the world, driving stability and conflict. We need universal health systems and universal social protections, measures that are affordable and which represent a short and long-term investment in a safer, more inclusive world. We need reforms that truly empower people to raise their voices freely and participate meaningfully in decisions so that they can live in dignity and equality, free of any form of discrimination, whether that is based on gender, race, disability, or any other status. We need real action to address the massive human rights impact of today's interlinked and accelerating crisis of pollution, climate change, and biodiversity loss. COVID-19 and climate change are very different phenomena, but they are connected. Only global action can ensure that everyone is vaccinated and protected. We need urgent, real, and decisive change with both national and international solidarity for those who are most vulnerable and who possess the fewest resources. We also need to build back better from the pandemic, leaving no one behind, so that we can face our environmental challenges. So I want to thank and celebrate those of you who have been speaking up and defending human rights. Many young people have led initiatives to help communities where lives and livelihoods have been devastated by the pandemic. Young people across the world have also rightly injected a sense of urgency and outrage about our global environmental crisis. And they have led important protests about the harsh and systemic racism in many societies. To me, one key lesson from this crisis is the need to overcome the many political differences that may divide us and to seek peaceful and meaningful ways to solve issues together. The pandemic, like climate change, demonstrate that there is no really such a thing as a faraway country. What happens to people in other places affects us, not only because we too can be infected or overwhelmed by environmental shifts, but because supply lines that our economies count on will be shattered. Political turmoil and grievances will spread. Of course, there are conflicts of interest, economic, social, ideological, all kinds of differences. But we need to grasp that working together with solidarity, trying to find common grounds and areas where we can mutually assist each other, can we solve our problems and create a more fair and sustainable future. We need to build bridges. Another key lesson that I take away from this terrible experience is the deep protective value of human rights. Everywhere, we need to see a concerted and comprehensive effort to ensure that people can live and work in decent conditions, without discrimination of every kind, with full respect of their human rights. We should be building a new economic paradigm that is sustainable, inclusive, and green, helping people become more resilient to crisis by reducing inequalities and promoting human dignity. To do this requires institutions that are transparent, participatory, and accountable. Wherever the opposite take holds, corruption, repression, impunity, we will find grievances and mistrust. We will see the failure to empower everyone in society to contribute to the full extent of their capacity. I want to emphasize this point because it must be clear that discrimination does not only harm the individuals who are directly targeted, it hurts all of us. The pandemic has again reminded us of the many devastating impacts of racism, for example. Around the world, communities that are burdened with systemic and long-standing discrimination have suffered disproportionate death, as well as far higher poverty rates, child dropout rates, and other negative impacts. Like racism, discrimination against women and girls is a terrible and comprehensive violation of the individuals who are targeted, and it is also a major obstacle to development. It weakens all of society. It harms everyone. Combating all forms of discrimination should be a core priority for every country and community, perhaps every human being. We all need each other, and we all need justice. All of us are navigating new challenges in unmapped territory, and it is precisely in such times of crisis that we need sound principles to guide our path. Just as individuals have been made more vulnerable to COVID-19 by comorbidities, many underlying and long-standing human rights gaps and failing on inequalities, climate change, and other critical issues have generated terrible vulnerabilities for entire societies and regions. When the leaders of states turn away from shared principles and the search of shared solutions to global problems, that leads to increasing suffering and chaos. We have seen it. But the opposite is also true. When we can identify principles that all of us can share and act on them, we can generate surprisingly rapid and transformative change. Human rights-based policies deliver better outcomes for people all the way across the social and economic spectrum. But not only that, beyond the borders of the state. They encourage reconciliation. They prevent grievances, conflict, inequalities, and suffering and discrimination of all kinds. They build confidence and social harmony. They deepen trust. They build hope. I hope that you take away from these discussions is a sense that shared solutions, principled solutions can be achieved, and that they will make the world and all of our society better places to live in. Whether we're talking about new laws or an agreement on joint action to target a common problem like climate change or COVID-19, policies that are grounded in dialogue, built on inclusion and solidarity, and guided by human rights goals make for more effective and better outcomes. They have worked in the past. I have seen that in my own life, and they can work in the future, which is your future, a future you will share with billions of other people across the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to hear about some insightful information regarding the impacts on the current pandemic and how it raised inequalities in many levels, but also to recall us that we need reforms that really empower people, and we need global action and accountability and find common grounds. She reinforced the idea that we need to build bridges like the Ubuntus we are. So now we are going to move to the next moment. And for that, Moses, tell us.
Thank you so much. So the next moment is our usual group picture. And for this particular moment, allow me to call upon Pedro to give us the instructions. This is one of the exciting moments that we have to that we do. So Pedro, over to you.
Hello, Moses. Hello, Joanna. Hello, everyone around the world. It's so nice to be here with you today and to share this moment connected with dreams, connected with service, connected with looking to a brighter future, looking to a wonderful future together, always together. And because it's always together that this journey that we intend, that Ubuntu asks us to walk this path. For today's picture, we want to give you a new challenge. We want to invite you to create here, first of all, open your cameras, of course, the ones that didn't turn on your cameras already. Even if you are in the middle of the street somewhere, please turn on your cameras and show us your beautiful smile. And we want to create the biggest worldwide hug. So let's hug each other and let's open up our arms and connect with our other delegates, with the other delegates that are all around the world in so many places. And let's smile to the camera. I'm gonna cover the whole group, so many faces I can see. Open your arms, hug the other delegates, hug this first generation of Ubuntu United Nations delegates, Ubuntu United Nations fellows. Let's cover everyone and get everyone on board. Just a second so we can get everyone. A second, please. Just a second. It's good to practice. It's good to practice with your arms. I'm gonna take one more second. Okay. So we have our picture. Congratulations for everyone. And we have everyone with the worldwide hug of Ubuntu United Nations delegates. Joanna and Moses, please go ahead. Other delegates with the other
Thank you
should
so
go to
much.
the business. The
Ubuntu, a universal way of life. A present from Africa to the whole of humanity. Ubuntu means to become human. It is also this deep conviction that we only become a person through other persons. Ubuntu means interdependence, the development of one's individuality within a community, the capacity to look after yourself and the others. A philosophy that accommodates differences and connects those who seem to be opposites, building bridges instead of walls. Ubuntu's way of life leads to servant leadership as our planet so clamors. A leadership style followed by some and still being followed. It inspires us to make a difference. Ubuntu invites us to act. In serving others, we find ourselves. Ubuntu, I am because you are.